Wes from Carl Wesley Sewing Patterns here. In this video, I'm going to show you 5 useful stretch stitches you can use on your home sewing machine. I'm going to give you pros and cons of each stitch, as well as give you some different example uses for each stitch. Alright, let's get started. The first stitch I'm going to talk about is the lightning bolt stitch, and in my sewing machine manual, this one is just called a stretch stitch. Of the 5 stitches in this video, this one is probably the most useful because it can be used to sew all your basic seams in knit fabrics. The lightning bolt stitch is basically an alternative to your regular straight stitch when you're sewing stretchy garments. The pros of this stitch are that it's very easy to use and can be used on a lot of different knit fabrics. And the con is that it's really not anything special or fancy to look at. It's really just a basic functional stitch for sewing knits together. The next stitch I'm going to talk about is the triple stretch stitch, and similar to the lightning bolt stitch, this stitch can be used to sew your basic seams on knit fabrics. The pros of this stitch are that it creates a very strong seam, and it is also a nice looking stitch. So for that reason, I think sometimes it can be used for stitching knit hems or in other places where there is visible stitching on knit garments. The con of the triple stretch stitch, in my opinion, is that the back and forth stitching motion can be a bit tricky to sew sometimes, especially around tight curves. For this reason, I think the triple stretch stitch is best reserved for stitching in straight lines. On a side note, I think the triple stretch stitch looks best at a 3.0 length versus the standard 2.5 stitch length. The next stitch on the list is a 3-step zigzag stitch, also called an elastic attaching stitch, and this stitch is used in applications where elastic is stitched directly to your fabric. Elastic is typically attached to the garment using a serger, so this stitch can be especially useful if you don't have one. You can also use the 3-step zigzag stitch as decorative visible stitching on stretchy garments, as well as for hemming if you'd like. The pros of this stitch are that it is extremely stretchy and it is also a nice looking stitch. Perhaps the only con of this stitch is that it works up slowly, and using a serger would be much faster for attaching elastic. The next useful stretch stitch on a home sewing machine is the Overcasting Stitch, and on my sewing machine there are several different overcasting stitches, but the one I want to use on stretch fabrics looks like a straight line with diagonal broken lines coming off of it. This stitch is used to create commercial looking seams in knit garments without the use of a serger. The pros of this stitch are that it looks and functions very similar to actual serging, and the cons are that this stitch works up very slowly, and unless you have a side cutter attachment for your machine, you will have to go back and manually trim down the seams with your scissors to make it look like serging. The last stitch I'm going to discuss is the twin needle stitch, and if you want to have hems on your knit garments that look commercial without the use of a cover stitch machine, this is the stitch you're going to want to use. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because this setup will vary depending on your sewing machine, but my best suggestion is to consult your manual. The pro of this stitch is that from the outside of your garment, it looks just the same as any garment that you might purchase at the store. The con of doing a twin needle hem is that unless you get your thread tensions balanced correctly, there tends to be some tunneling between the two straight lines of stitching on the top. My best suggestion for twin needle hemming is to use a wash-away stabilizer to attach the fold of fabric. This will help prevent tunneling as well as keep everything nice and secure as you are stitching around your hem.